Offensive coaches, let's face it, defensive coordinators love when we break the huddle and they see regular 2x2 and 3x1 because they see it every week and have 4 coverages and 8 pressures that they can call against it. In this video, we're going to talk about some formations that defensive coordinators do not want to see when you break the huddle, and then I'm going to tell you at the end about how I'm evolving my offense to revolve around them. Let's dive in. So starting off in 11 personnel, we're going to take a look at trips. This is probably my single favorite formation because it really forces defenses to decide, are we going to treat the F and the Z just like regular twins? If so, how are we going to account for the tight end if he goes vertical? If we're an odd front team that normally bumps our outside linebacker out to apex the number 2, how are we going to ensure that we have an edge out here outside the tight end? In my experience running this formation the last few years in multiple different offenses is, especially against odd front teams, we're going to bring that outside linebacker down. We're going to end up with 2 over 2 and then a free safety over the top. So we're going to get a one-on-one backside. And what I really love about this formation in that light is that I know almost on a week-to-week basis exactly what defense I'm going to get. Defenses may slant a little bit differently or shade a little bit differently, but I know structurally where the defenders are going to be. Now, the best way to defend it, in my opinion, is probably to be in a regular 4-2. That way you can still have your defensive end head up or outside of the tight end, and you can still have your 3 over 2 to the F and the Z with your free safety to the weak side, so you can still play 2 over 1-ish on the X. But we don't see a lot of even front defenses where I'm at. This is the defensive structure that I see most often. We'll normally have a wheel backside and then some version of a 3-2 in between the tackles. Now, if I want to bring that 6th man in the box off the ball, then I would have to swap the F and the Y, because in an effort to make my offense simpler, I am always keeping the X and the Y on, the F and the Z off. So instead of trips, this would be west open, but we still have that same idea. There's a 3-man surface with 2 receivers extended outside of it. Next up, we have south. Now, south for me is a little bit different than the rest of the Shanahan system. For them, it's an automatic 5-yard split between the X and the weak side tackle. For me, I want to keep the stack out a little bit wider, and then I can bring them in with a tag if I want to. So if we're on a hash, then I really want this stack to be kind of in line with the far goalpost. So what this does is now a defense is not playing their normal triangle coverage over here. They have to determine, how are we going to play this stack? Instead of just lining up in regular twins and giving them the formation that they see every week of the season, we're still forcing them to make some kind of check, communicate something, not just line up and say base, base, base. We're forcing that communication, and if I want that regular twin spacing, we can get there with just a quick little motion. Now again, if I want my 6th person in the box to be off, then that would need to be the F, and the formation here would be Deuce Toast. So Deuce tells the F that he is in a weak side wing, so this would be Deuce Left Toast because the Y is on the left. Toast is kind of a combination tag for tout, which is the Y open in a slot split, and then stack. So tout plus stack equals toast. So now I have that same idea. We've got a 3-man surface with a stack away from it. Again, if I want to get to regular twin spacing, just be Z flare. And lastly, for 11 personnel, we have speed switch. So speed would be if the Z was the number 2 and the F was the number 3. But for me, the Z is going to be my best receiver. And out of this formation, he's going to be the one bubbling out. I like that a lot better from a number 3 receiver, so we can get hopefully multiple crack blocks and then just the Z exposed on a corner. But the structure of the formation that we're looking at is what a lot of people call nub trips. I just call it trips closed. But what is so great about this formation is we're forcing the defense to cover 3 extended, but they also have to worry about a 3-man surface to the other side. Now, a lot of what we see to this formation is we're going to have a corner over 1, a safety over number 2, and then an outside linebacker kind of inside of number 3. So we're almost always going to get 3 over 3. Maybe the defense is going to invert the corner and the safety to the tight end side, just depending on how they feel about their corner. But again, we're forcing them to communicate. We have the ability out of this formation to run 3 vertical routes to the same side. I love sail flood concepts to the weak side here with the X, the F, and the Z. But we also have strong side run capability to the Y side. Depending on the defensive alignment, we can maybe even account for everybody except the corner to the tight end side. Now, if we're 3 over 3 and then the next person we have is a 4-eye inside the tackle, then we can still run all of our outside zone and we have everybody blocked up to the play side. Maybe they bring a Mike linebacker out so that they can go 4 over 3 and then boss their linebackers over that way. Now we have numbers back to a tight end side. This forces a defense to make so many decisions so quickly, and I think that it's impossible to defend everything out of it with just one presentation, unless you just have 11 guys that are better than ours. Something else to think about, we mentioned it with the other 2 formations. Let's just say that I want to get back to regular 2x2. I can take the Z or the F really, and just motion them back over to the other side. And now I'm in that same twins formation that we aren't wanting to line up in because it's very common for defenses to see, but within one motion, we're right there. So we're forcing a defense to make some kind of check from their base defense. If they have a pressure called, good luck checking into it and out of it based on emotion. And what I really think we can get defenses to do here is be very, very vanilla. RPOs are everywhere across the football landscape, but oftentimes they can seem complicated and too difficult to execute at the high school level. If you're interested in running RPOs, but you feel like a lot of what you see is too complicated and difficult for a high schooler to execute, then check out my free clinic, link in the description below. I'm going to take you through my strategy and philosophies and schemes for keeping RPOs simple and effective at the high school level. And better yet, it doesn't matter what offense you run. These strategies can be applied anywhere from the spread to the single wing. Again, it is totally free. It's on Coaching Share. The link is in the description below. You don't want to miss it. All right, looking at some 12 personnel here, we have West Slim. So West at its core is our 4-man surface. Slim is our stack with the Z coming over to the stack side. Again, this stack would be on the far upright to me, so not all the way out to the hash, so that the quarterback doesn't need a hose to be able to throw the Z if we go into some flare motion to get to a regular twins flank over there. But it's wide enough to have that outside linebacker make a decision. Am I a box player or am I a coverage player? And what we're stressing a defense with here is we are unbalanced over here. We have a 4-man surface. So are you going to knock the front and make the guard essentially the new center so you've got 3 to one side and 3 to the other? Well, if so, then we're just one motion away from bringing the F back over here. Good luck shifting your entire front a man back over. And now if you're not going to declare him the new center, then we have an unbalanced surface that we can run to where we've got a gap 1 somewhere. And on top of that, you still have to decide how are we going to play the stack. And the same things we've been talking about, if we want to get to that regular twins alignment, then it's just a quick Z flare out in between the hashes and the numbers. All right, here we're in what I call West Acer. So this is a condensed formation. Doesn't quite look like it because we don't normally think about condensed formations like this. But we have a 5-man surface here to the strong side. And then we have a 5-yard split between our X and the weak side tackle. Again, we're forcing a defense to decide, are they going to shift the front? But we also have to force them to decide, we have 3 eligible receivers over here. How are we going to account for all of them? And then even on top of that, what's really neat about this formation is it's essentially bunch. But what I've noticed, and I've seen other coaches notice too, defensive coaches, if you're listening, mute real quick so you don't catch this secret. But if the point man is not the number 2, a lot of defensive coordinators won't make bunch checks to it. So there's no different spacing here. If maybe the Y was number 2 and the F was number 3, this would be easily recognizable as bunch. So defensive coordinators would have, their guys check to it. But even though we're going to have 3 receivers in the same vicinity right here, the exact same spacing as far as body for body goes, you may not get a bunch check. So we might not get those coverages that are aimed at stopping bunch, even though we are essentially bunched together. Next up, we have Deuce, and this is really basic double tight, and especially if the F is off, this is a little bit easier for defensive coordinators to align to. A lot of times they're just going to declare the strength to the tight end because he's on and the F is off, and then especially against a 3-4, you're just going to have both outside linebackers down, basically playing 9 techniques with your 2 high shell. So this formation in and of itself may not keep defensive coordinators as up at night, but kind of the inverse of what we talked about with West. So remember West, the F was a wing, and this creates essentially unbalanced, and we have to force the defensive coordinator to decide, are we going to shift the front over? And if they do, then we're just a quick motion away from being back to balanced, and they're hopefully shifted to the strong side, overshifted at this point, because we're not going to have time to move the entire front over a man. So what we can do now out of Deuce is, again, the inverse of that. We can take this F and motion him across, and now is the defense going to recognize that we have unbalanced, and then are they going to try and late shift their front over a man? Again, good luck with that. I also like that out of this formation, we are 1 Z motion away from having essentially what we talked about with trips earlier, or West open. But now there's still a 3-man surface backside. So we have double 3-man surfaces that we're presenting to the defense. And you have to decide how we're going to account for the 3 receivers, 3 eligible threats to the same side, and a nub on the backside. So the magic with Deuce isn't necessarily with the line up and run it formation, but we are 1 motion away from creating some serious issues for a defense to be able to fit and adjust on the fly. Let's take a look at some 21 personnel, and here we're in weak Ace. So Ace is our term to bring the X and the Z both into condensed splits, and then what we have out of our 21 personnel is we have a more movable gap. Yes, is he movable when he's in a wing position? Definitely, but it's easier to become a lead blocker when coming from the backfield. You also aren't forcing the defense to recognize you as part of the surface like we talked about with West and with Deuce. So here I really like this movable gap with the F, and out of 2 back sets, I really like having the F and the Z on opposite sides, because from this formation here, especially when we're condensed and the splits are tighter, we are a very fast snapping the ball right here to a Z jet sweep where we have multiple lead blockers around the edge. We can also pretty quickly jump the fullback over to the other side and run an outside zone. How this might work is we might be able to seal in the front, maybe crack the Z on the safety, and now the fullback's leading on the corner, and we have a heck of an alley to run outside zone to. Final formation we'll look at, this is strong slim. So again, slim, we have our X and Z weak side stack. They're in a normal width, far upright. If we want to bring them in, it would be slimmer. Then they'd be in that 5-yard split. But again, we have the F and the Z on opposite sides to start with. But if I want to get them on the same side, it's a very quick motion for the fullback to the other side of the quarterback. And now we're forcing a defense to account for a stack. We're forcing them to account for a nub, a closed slot surface, and to try and figure out where after the snap this movable gap lead blocker is going to go. So I'm going to be evolving my offense to revolve around these formations because every single one of them forces a defense to make some kind of check. And I feel like as an offense, anytime we can make 16, 17, 18-year-old kids have to communicate, that is a win for the offense. So what we want to do is no matter what the defensive coordinator calls, we want to force some kind of check for the defense. It may be something as simple as forcing a stack check, forcing a trips check, but the call on the field for the defense is not going to be exactly what they run when the ball is snapped. So we force some kind of check with a stack, with trips, with unbalanced, and then if we want some kind of what we might consider a base look, the 2x2 formation that I reference frequently throughout the video, we can just motion to it. The difference is when we come out and align in that formation after breaking the huddle, then the defensive coordinator has a chance to call a play for that formation that they see frequently. But if we motion to it, then he's not going to have the time to make any calls specifically for that formation, and I don't think that very many 16, 17, 18-year-old kids can call pressures to formations after we have motioned. So again, we want to force some kind of communication, some kind of check to our formation after breaking the huddle. And then if we want to get to a different formation, we can motion to it using the theory of using motion to create formations. And if you want to know more about that, you can click on the screen and watch this next video.